Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Israel-Hamas hostage release agreement progress reported. Pakistan and Afghanistan experience increased clashes. Madagascar faces worsening political instability. U.S. deteriorate. With trade frictions, international protests mark the hostage situation. Humanitarian disaster continues in suit pressure. Indian student detained in Ukraine over recruitment link. Seychelles elects president. Grapples with methanol poisoning crisis. Flooding impacts Thailand. Tariff. Red presses military to Lebanon conflicts. Barren. Ardent July's cancer treatment update in Bell. Pace prior versus passes threat. Israel-Hamas hostage release agreement. Key developments. A new round of negotiations between Israel and Hamas has begun, aimed at finalizing the release of 48 living hostages held in Gaza. This marks the third time the Rabin Medical Center in Petah Tikva's hostage unit has gone operational, highlighting the ongoing efforts to provide specialized care to these individuals. The medical team is pioneering captivity medicine, recognizing the complex, long-term physical and psychological effects of extended detention. They are adapting their approach, acknowledging that symptoms may not manifest immediately and requiring patience in assessing and treating the hostages' needs. The hospital's unit is prioritizing a supportive environment, mirroring a hotel setting with private rooms, soft furnishings, and a companion bed for those who prefer solitude. A multidisciplinary team, including medical professionals, nutritionists, social workers, and mental health specialists, is providing comprehensive care, focusing on both the physical and emotional recovery of the hostages. Several hostages, weakened by malnutrition and prolonged captivity, will be transferred to the Rabin Medical Center. The team is meticulously documenting their conditions, recognizing the delayed presentation of physical ailments and the need for a phased approach to treatment. Social worker Karina Schwartz emphasizes the importance of creating a safe space for the hostages and their families, managing communication carefully to avoid overwhelming them with traumatic details. The team is acutely aware of the delicate balance between providing support and respecting the hostages' need for quiet reflection. The release represents a significant step forward, but the long-term care and support for the hostages will continue, demanding a sustained, multidisciplinary approach. The hospital's unit is adapting its strategies based on lessons learned from previous releases, demonstrating a commitment to addressing the unique challenges posed by this complex situation. The agreement has created a framework for the continued care of the released hostages, with the medical team prepared to address their evolving needs for the coming weeks and months. Pakistan-Afghanistan clashes intensify amidst rising tensions. Recent days have witnessed a significant escalation of violence along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, marking the most serious fighting between the two nations since the Taliban's return to power in 2021. Dozens of fighters, including Pakistani soldiers and Taliban combatants, have been killed in overnight clashes, with both sides claiming significantly higher casualties than officially acknowledged. Pakistan reports 23 soldiers killed, while the Taliban asserts 9 of their fighters were slain. The conflict stems from Pakistan's demand for the Taliban to address the growing number of attacks originating from Afghan soil, specifically targeting Pakistan. Islamabad accuses the Taliban of harboring militants, including the TTP, who operate from Afghan territory. The Taliban vehemently denies these accusations, maintaining that their territory is free of Pakistani militants. The clashes began following Pakistani airstrikes in Kabul and a marketplace in eastern Afghanistan on Thursday, which triggered retaliatory attacks by the Taliban. Pakistan security officials shared video footage purportedly showing Afghan border posts being targeted, although independent verification remains elusive. Heavy fighting involved small arms and artillery fire across multiple locations along the 600-kilometer border, including areas like Kurram, Bajar, and Angor Ada. Both sides claim to have destroyed each other's border posts. In response to the escalating situation, Qatar and Saudi Arabia expressed concern and urged restraint from both sides. As a result, fighting subsided by Sunday morning, though intermittent gunfire continued in some Pakistani areas. The conflict has led to the closure of key border crossings, including Torkham and Cheyman, disrupting trade and movement. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi made a rare visit to India, prompting a diplomatic thaw and a decision to upgrade relations between the two nations. The situation remains volatile, with ongoing concerns about the potential for further escalation and the impact on regional stability. The disputed Durand Line, a colonial-era border, continues to be a source of contention. Madagascar's political crisis deepens as military unit seizes control, An attempted coup d'état is underway in Madagascar, according to President Andry Rajoelina, following a takeover by the Capsat military unit, the same force instrumental in his rise to power in 2009. Capsat now controls all branches of the armed forces, appointing General Demosthene Picolas as Army Chief of Staff with backing from Armed Forces Minister Matansoa Daramas and Jaka Rakoto. Protests, led by the Gen Z Mata movement and fueled by widespread dissatisfaction with Rajoelina's government, including high unemployment, corruption, and the cost of living crisis, have reached a critical juncture, culminating in the capture of May 13 Square, a historic focal point of previous uprisings. Protesters, emboldened by Capsat's unexpected support, with some troops joining the demonstrations and resulting in a shootout and one fatality, are demanding Rajoelina's resignation. Air France has suspended flights to Antananarivo due to the escalating security situation. The UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, has urged security forces to cease using disproportionate force, citing at least 22 deaths and 100 injuries, a figure disputed by the presidency, which claims only 12 deaths involving looters and vandals. Madagascar's history is marked by repeated uprisings since independence in 1960, including the 2009 protests that ousted Marc Ravalomanana. Rajoelina has governed for 4 years and returned to power in 2018. Despite abundant natural resources, Madagascar remains one of the world's poorest nations, with 75% of its 30 million people living below the poverty line, and only 1/3 having access to electricity, according to the World Bank and IMF. The situation remains highly volatile, with ongoing clashes and the continued demand for Rajoelina's removal. U.S.-China tensions escalate amid tariff threat and export controls, and recent developments highlight escalating tensions between the United States and China, primarily driven by reciprocal threats of trade restrictions and concerns over a potential trade war. Donald Trump's latest declaration of a proposed 100% tariff on Chinese goods has been characterized by China as a demonstration of double standards, reigniting fears of significant disruption to global trade. This move follows previous agreements to reduce triple-digit tariffs, leaving existing U.S. tariffs at 30% on Chinese goods and a 10% tariff on U.S. imports into China. China's Commerce Ministry responded with strong criticism of the U.S. export restrictions on semiconductors, framing them as an abuse of export control measures and discriminatory practices. They defended China's own export controls on rare earths, asserting these actions are normal and intended to safeguard national security, echoing sentiments from the height of the previous trade conflict. The situation was further complicated by China's recent announcement of tightening export controls on rare earths, a strategic move given China's dominance, approximately 90% in the global supply of these critical materials used in products like solar panels and smartphones. This action was viewed as a deliberate strengthening of China's position ahead of upcoming trade talks. Financial markets reacted negatively to the escalating rhetoric, with the S&P 500 share index experiencing a significant drop of 2.7%. Marking its steepest decline since April. The possibility of a meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, scheduled for later this month in South Korea, remains uncertain due to the heightened tensions. Both sides appear to be leveraging the situation to bolster their negotiating positions, creating a volatile environment for international commerce. The core issue revolves around accusations of unfair practices and the potential for a protracted trade war, fueled by differing interpretations of national security and economic interests. International Peace Summit and pro-Palestinian demonstrations, following a U.S.-brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, international efforts to secure a lasting peace are underway, culminating in an upcoming summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is attending the summit, scheduled for Monday, alongside over 20 other world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron. The summit aims to formally sign a peace plan brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump, which includes the release of hostages, the exchange of Palestinian and Israeli prisoners, and increased humanitarian aid to Gaza. However, significant challenges remain in negotiating the subsequent phases of the agreement, particularly regarding Gaza's governance, Israeli troop withdrawal, and the disarmament of Hamas. The UK government's role is viewed as supportive, with efforts focused on securing private finance for Gaza. Simultaneously, tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators converged on central London on Saturday, organized by the Palestine Coalition. The march, beginning at Victoria Embankment and culminating in a rally at Whitehall, expressed continued support for Palestinians and criticized the ceasefire for failing to address the conflict's root causes. Counter-protesters, affiliated with the Stop the Hate group, clashed with the main march, leading to arrests by the Metropolitan Police for Public Order Act breaches and affray. Speakers at the London demonstration emphasized the precarious nature of the ceasefire and vowed to continue protests until full Palestinian liberation. The U.S. is deploying up to 200 troops to establish a civil military coordination center in Israel, alongside forces from Arab and Muslim countries including Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. The UK has no plans to send troops to monitor the ceasefire. The summit's success hinges on reaching agreements on these remaining critical issues, while London continues to support the peace process through financial and diplomatic channels. El-Fasher drone strike: humanitarian crisis deepens in Sudan. A devastating drone strike in the besieged Sudanese city of El-Fasher has resulted in dozens of deaths, primarily among civilians, further escalating the country's already catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Activists and eyewitnesses describe scenes of widespread panic as rescuers recovered bodies from the rubble of the Dar al-Arkam camp, a displacement shelter targeted by 2 drone strikes and 8 artillery shells by the Rapid Support Forces (RSF). The Sudan Doctors Network reports 57 fatalities, including 17 children, with at least 60 people confirmed dead. El-Fasher, the last major urban center in Darfur held by the Sudanese army, has been under siege by the RSF for 17 months, an attempt to seize control of the army's stronghold. The situation is described as going beyond disaster and genocide by the Resistance Committee. The ongoing conflict, triggered by a power struggle between top commanders, has ravaged Sudan since 2023, displacing over 12 million people and causing more than 150,000 deaths. Hospitals in El-Fasher, already overwhelmed by months of bombardment, are struggling to cope with the influx of wounded, treating patients on floors and in corridors. The RSF's intensified assault has led experts to predict the city's imminent fall unless immediate reinforcements arrive. The RSF has completed an earthen wall around the city, bolstering their siege and hindering civilian escape. The UN estimates 250,000 civilians remain trapped in El-Fasher, raising concerns about potential war crimes given the continued targeting of civilian areas. Hunger and disease are rampant, compounded by dwindling supplies. Recent incidents, including the shelling of a hospital 2 days prior, resulted in 13 deaths. Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, condemned the RSF's disregard for civilian life. The conflict's impact extends beyond El-Fasher, with widespread displacement and casualties across Sudan. The RSF's ambition is to control the entire Darfur region, potentially establishing an alternative government, while the Sudanese army maintains control over most of the north and east. Indian student detained in Ukraine linked to Russian army recruitment. An Indian student, Sahil Majoti, 22, from Gujarat, has been detained by Ukrainian forces and is linked to his involvement with the Russian army during the ongoing conflict. Majoti initially traveled to Russia in January 2024 to study computer engineering, first completing a 3-month language course in St. Petersburg before relocating to Moscow for college. He supported himself through part-time work as a kitchenware courier. In April 2024, he was falsely accused of drug possession after drugs were allegedly found in a parcel he delivered. To avoid a 7-year prison sentence, he joined the Russian army, accepting a promise of pay for a year of service. According to his mother, Hasina Majoti, he was offered varying amounts of money, ranging from 100,000 to over 1 million rubles. He completed 15 days of military training in September 2024 and was subsequently deployed to the battlefield on September 30, 2024, where he engaged in a confrontation with his commander, leading to his separation from Russian forces. He then sought assistance from Ukrainian forces, resulting in his capture. The Ukrainian army released a video of Majoti detailing his circumstances, stating he was presented with a choice between imprisonment and military service. The BBC is investigating the case, and the Indian Foreign Ministry has not yet received formal communication from Ukraine. The family had hired a private lawyer in Russia, but were unaware of his military recruitment. The video shows he was given a year to serve before being released. The exact date and location of the video are currently verified. The situation highlights a complex and concerning aspect of the conflict, involving false accusations, recruitment tactics, and the potential vulnerability of foreign nationals caught in the crossfire. The Indian government is actively pursuing the case to ensure Sahil Majoti's safe return and to investigate the circumstances surrounding his involvement with the Russian military. Seychelles presidential election sees opposition victory. Patrick Hermany of the United Seychelles, a U.S. party, secured a decisive victory in the Seychelles presidential election, defeating incumbent Wavel Ramkalawan in a closely contested runoff. Official results announced by the Electoral Commission revealed Hermany garnered 52.7% of the vote, compared to Ramkalawan's 47.3%. In his acceptance speech, Hermany pledged to address the nation's rising cost of living, restore vital public services, and foster national unity, emphasizing a new era for all Seychellois. Following the loss of his bid for a second term, Ramkalawan offered his congratulations to Hermione, acknowledging a significant legacy. The election necessitated a runoff following the initial round, where neither candidate achieved an outright majority. Notably, Hermione faced politically motivated witchcraft charges in 2023, an attempt widely believed to be aimed at hindering his presidential aspirations, charges which were subsequently dropped. Hermione's platform centered on inclusivity and equal opportunity for all Seychellois. The United Seychelles Party also maintained its dominance in the parliamentary elections last month, regaining control of the legislature after a previous defeat to Ramkalawan's Linyan Democratic Sizalwa (LDS) party. This election outcome echoes a broader trend in Africa, mirroring the recent removal of Lazarus Chakwera from power in Malawi, driven by growing public dissatisfaction regarding the escalating cost of living. The victory represents a shift in Seychelles' political landscape, with Hermione's commitment to unity and economic reform taking center stage. The U.S. party's parliamentary majority solidifies their position and provides a framework for implementing their policy objectives, marking a significant change in Seychelles' governance. The election's implications extend beyond the immediate results, signaling a potential realignment of political forces within the island nation. Brazil's methanol poisoning crisis, a national tragedy, a widespread health crisis in Brazil, triggered by the deliberate poisoning of consumer alcohol with industrial methanol, has resulted in multiple deaths and widespread panic. The crisis began with the death of Marcelo Lombardi, a real estate businessman, who succumbed to methanol poisoning after consuming a small amount of vodka at home. Investigations revealed that industrial methanol, typically used in biodiesel production and laboratory applications, was infiltrating Brazil's alcohol supply, often sourced from gas stations, and used to cut liquor production costs, potentially through illicit factories. The crisis is characterized by rapid onset symptoms, including blindness, organ failure, and coma, occurring within 24 to 48 hours of methanol ingestion. Initial responses were hampered by a lack of readily available antidotes, particularly ethanol, and insufficient hospital labs equipped to test for methanol and its toxic byproduct, formic acid. The slow arrival of fumipazole, a specific antidote approved in other countries, further exacerbated the situation. Authorities have identified a complex black market supply chain responsible for distributing contaminated alcohol, with bars and restaurants in affluent districts like Itam Bibi and Pinheiros reporting significant drops in customers. The crisis has exposed critical weaknesses in Brazil's healthcare system, including inadequate stockpiles of antidotes and a lack of a national antidote policy, which was under development prior to the outbreak. Numerous clandestine factories were identified and shut down, resulting in the arrest of 41 individuals. Despite these efforts, hundreds of thousands of fake labels were seized, and the full extent of the contamination remains uncertain. The case of Marcelo Lombardi, tragically described as murdered by greed, highlights the devastating consequences of this deliberate act. The crisis has prompted a nationwide alert, with 259 suspected cases and 5 confirmed deaths as of October 8th, primarily in Sao Paulo, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. Experts emphasize the importance of avoiding all alcoholic beverages until a safer supply chain can be established. The situation underscores the need for enhanced surveillance, improved access to medicines, and comprehensive training for healthcare professionals. The Brazilian Ministry of Health is actively working to develop a national antidote policy and address the systemic issues exposed by this national tragedy. Thai business and healthcare landscape key trends and challenges, and Thailand's business and healthcare sectors are undergoing significant shifts, presenting both opportunities and challenges. Across industries, adaptability and strategic foresight are crucial for success, particularly regarding technological advancements and evolving consumer demands. In business, managers must act as translators between technological innovation, like AI, and practical business needs, driving efficiency and competitive advantage. Sustainability is rapidly becoming a core business driver, with consumers and investors prioritizing green credentials. Regional economic rebalancing, centered on Thailand's central location, offers growth potential, demanding rapid adaptation and regional partnerships. Furthermore, a startup speed with corporate scale mentality is encouraging innovation within large Thai corporations. The healthcare landscape, dominated by the 30-baht universal healthcare scheme, is facing considerable strain. Despite official assurances of smooth operation, reports indicate mounting debt within partner hospitals and clinics, leading to service disruptions and increased travel distances for patients. The scheme's per-patient allocation of over 8,000 baht is deemed insufficient, particularly given Thailand's impending aging population. Addressing these issues requires systemic reforms within the National Health Security Office, NHSO. Critics highlight a lack of transparency and effective decision-making processes, coupled with overlapping committee memberships and inadequate cost-effectiveness assessments. Recommendations from the Thailand Development Research Institute, TDRI, emphasize strengthening governance, improving technology for reimbursement, and prioritizing core services. The NHSO's operational challenges are exacerbated by the need for greater accountability and a more nuanced understanding of the realities faced by patients and healthcare providers. Japan's technological expertise, particularly in energy efficiency and new energy technologies, offers potential solutions, though collaboration requires addressing cultural and logistical hurdles. Ultimately, the long-term sustainability of Thailand's healthcare system hinges on proactive reforms and a commitment to addressing the underlying structural weaknesses within the 30-baht scheme. Ayutthaya and surrounding regions face severe flooding. Severe flooding continues to plague Ayutthaya province, now impacting 12 of the province's 16 districts, affecting nearly 50,000 households. The crisis is primarily driven by the continued high discharge rate of 300 cubic meters per second from the Chao Phraya Dam in Chai Nat. Bangsai district was recently added to the list of affected areas, where water levels have reached 3 meters, forcing residents to elevate their belongings on makeshift scaffolding. The flooding, which began in late May, is exacerbated by annual rainfall and the dam's outflow. Locals are demanding long-term flood prevention strategies given the recurring nature of the problem. Culture Minister Sabita Taized has focused on protecting Ayutthaya's historical sites, coordinating with the Fine Arts Department to mitigate flood damage. Simultaneously, in Paychecks province, a 7 million baht budget has been approved for a flood barrier and automatic water pumping system for Tapan Hin Crown Prince Hospital. While floodwaters are receding in Muang, Tapan Hin and Bang Mun Nak districts of Paychecks, low-lying areas along the Nan River and runoff from Sukhothai, and the Bang Rakam model area in Phitsanulok persist as flooded zones. 5 districts Samangam, Wacharaban Rami, Phu Prathapchang, Bung Narang, and Phu Thale remain submerged. The province's Disaster Prevention Office reports extensive damage, including 34,000 ray of farmland, 37 fish ponds, and 29 roads. The Meteorological Department forecasts heavy rainfall across central Thailand, Bangkok, and surrounding provinces from October 11th to 13th, followed by a decrease in the north and northeast, and a potential increase between October 14th and 17th. Residents in the lower northeast and central, eastern, and southern regions are urged to prepare for heavy rain, and fishermen in the Gulf and Andaman Sea are advised to avoid sailing during thunderstorms. The ongoing situation highlights the vulnerability of the region to both upstream dam discharge and seasonal rainfall patterns. Trump directs Pentagon to fund military paychecks amidst shutdown. President Donald Trump has directed the Department of Defense to utilize available funds to ensure military personnel receive their paychecks, despite the ongoing federal government shutdown. This directive, issued through Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, aims to circumvent the shutdown's impact on service members, who are scheduled to miss their first paycheck on October 15th. Trump initially stated that the administration had identified funds for this purpose, drawing approximately $8 billion from 2 years' worth of previously appropriated research and development testing and evaluation funds. The move follows a third week of the shutdown, which has created significant strain for military families and federal employees. Numerous individuals, particularly those living paycheck to paycheck, are facing financial uncertainty. The Hampton Roads region of Virginia, heavily reliant on the federal government, is experiencing a ripple effect, with potential economic losses estimated at $1 billion if back pay is not provided. Congressional Republicans have largely rejected a standalone bill to address military pay, deeming it a tactic to pressure Democrats. However, the administration's decision to redirect funds from research and development raises concerns about potential legal challenges due to Congress's authority over the federal purse. During a Navy event in Norfolk, Trump previously pledged to ensure service members receive their full pay, a promise that has now been translated into action. The situation is particularly poignant for military families like the Baileys in Norfolk, who are experiencing a repeat of the stress and uncertainty felt during the previous government shutdown. The U.S. Coast Guard, operating under the Department of Homeland Security, remains uncertain about receiving funds from this redirection. Historically, during a partial government shutdown in 2019, active-duty Coast Guard members did not receive paychecks, a situation that was later rectified with back pay. The ongoing crisis highlights the complex interplay of political stalemate and the tangible consequences faced by those who serve and work within the federal government. The Food Bank of Southeast Virginia and the Eastern Shore is anticipating increased demand as the shutdown continues. Trump's confrontational strategy fuels urban conflicts. The escalating tensions between the Trump administration and major American cities represent a pivotal struggle over presidential power and the future of American democracy. Fueled by a strategy of confrontation, the administration is aggressively challenging urban policies related to immigration enforcement, diversity programs, and transgender rights, utilizing federal funding as a central tool of pressure. At the core of this conflict is the administration's attempt to reshape the nation's urban landscape, leveraging its authority over federal grants to influence policy decisions in cities like New York, Chicago, Seattle, and Minneapolis. This strategy has triggered legal battles, judicial injunctions, and significant political repercussions. Key entities involved include the Trump administration, led by President Donald Trump, and a coalition of major cities, spearheaded by mayors grappling with the administration's tactics. The Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the Departments of Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, and Education are instrumental in implementing these policies. The administration's actions have triggered legal challenges, with judges issuing rulings against the administration's attempts to withhold funding based on policy disagreements. Despite these setbacks, the administration continues to pursue its agenda, employing tactics such as canceling federal grants and attempting to circumvent judicial orders. The conflict has significant political ramifications, particularly in suburban areas where concerns about crime, disorder, and civil liberties are prominent. The administration's confrontational approach is aimed at mobilizing conservative voters and potentially reshaping the political landscape in upcoming elections. Judicial battles over the administration's actions are ongoing, with courts questioning the administration's authority to impose conditions on federal funding. However, the administration's determination to challenge urban policies remains steadfast, intensifying the struggle over the balance of power in American government. The future of American democracy may well be determined by the outcome of these ongoing legal and political battles, playing out primarily in the nation's largest urban centers. Joe Biden's cancer treatment update. Former U.S. President Joe Biden is currently undergoing radiation therapy as part of his treatment plan for prostate cancer, confirmed by his spokesperson. The diagnosis, revealed in May, indicated a more aggressive form of the disease with metastasis to the bone, characterized by a Gleason score of 9 grade group 5, signifying a high-grade illness with potentially rapid cancer cell spread. Despite this classification, the cancer is deemed hormone-sensitive, facilitating effective management strategies. Biden, aged 82, is also receiving hormone treatment, though specific details remain undisclosed. This treatment update follows his initial diagnosis and the subsequent 5-week radiation therapy schedule. The decision to pursue radiation marks a new stage in his ongoing care. Prior to this treatment, Biden's health had been a subject of public scrutiny during his presidency, ultimately leading to his withdrawal from the 2024 re-election campaign. His former Vice President, Kamala Harris, ultimately secured the Democratic nomination and lost the election to Donald Trump. Throughout his career, Biden has been a strong advocate for cancer research, exemplified by the relaunch of the Cancer Moonshot initiative in 2022 alongside his wife, Jill Biden. This ambitious program aims to prevent over 4 million cancer deaths by 2047 through mobilized research efforts. The news comes after Biden's first interview since leaving the White House in May, where he acknowledged the difficulty of stepping away from the political arena. Prostate cancer remains the second most prevalent cancer affecting men, with approximately 13 out of every 100 men projected to develop the disease during their lifetime, primarily due to age. Biden's personal connection to this illness is profound, having lost his son, Beau, to brain cancer in 2015, further fueling his commitment to cancer research and patient care. His current treatment underscores his continued dedication to this vital cause. Nobel Peace Prize controversy and Trump's recognition. The recent awarding of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has prompted a notable expression of gratitude from the recipient herself. Machado, long a vocal critic of Nicolas Maduro's 12-year rule, communicated her appreciation to U.S. President Donald Trump during a congratulatory phone call, stating the Venezuelan people are thankful for his actions around the world for peace, for freedom, for democracy. This acknowledgement comes amidst ongoing controversy surrounding Trump's nomination and his desire to personally secure the prize, fueled by his claims of ending 7 wars. The Nobel Committee's decision to award Machado, despite Trump's nomination, has been interpreted by a White House official as prioritizing politics over genuine peace efforts. Mikado's recognition is specifically linked to her extraordinary courage in resisting dictatorship and advocating for a transition to democracy, particularly considering the serious threats to her life. She has been forced to live in hiding and, despite being barred from last year's elections, successfully united the Venezuelan opposition. Meanwhile, in the entertainment sphere, comedians Roy Wood Jr. and his guests on Have I Got News for You dissected Governor Gavin Newsom's apparent adoption of Donald Trump's social media strategies. The show's recurring examination of political trends highlighted Newsom's utilization of similar tactics, reflecting a broader commentary on the political landscape. This episode underscored the ongoing debate surrounding Trump's political influence and the strategies employed by various figures seeking to emulate his approach, demonstrating a parallel between political ambition and public engagement. The episode's focus on Newsom's approach revealed a critical examination of political communication and the impact of populist strategies.